Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Kowloon Generic Romance Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So it's really interesting that, I guess she hasn't really had anyone to talk about it with, but it's interesting that Kujirai, the first person she meets, that being Yao Mei, she ends up talking to her about it. It's just, I guess it's like when you're kind of dealing with something, and it is that thing where it's kind of easier to talk to someone that you don't know versus anyone you do know. But also, we don't really know if Kujirai has any friends other than Yao Mei, because we find out in this episode that Kujirai has no memories, and she says like she never really gave it much thought until she saw this photo and found out like, oh, there's this woman that looks exactly like me who was engaged to Kudo. Because the big question then becomes like, because she says like, oh, this isn't me, and Yao Mei's coming from the perspective of, well, you said that isn't you, so this isn't you. And she's like, and even Kujirai's like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, well, the fact is that she's like, Yao Mei's like, from my head down to my toes, I've gotten plastic surgery, so my past no longer exists. So whoever I was then no longer exists. That's not me anymore. It's interesting because it almost feels like this is borderlining on a very like Ship of Theseus thing of kind of like, it's in Yao Mei's perspective, it's kind of not, but like how it's the whole thing of when you change enough parts of the original ship, and there's less and less of the original ship anymore, is it still the same ship anymore? And it's kind of that, and it feels like that's kind of where Kujirai's story kind of parallels, but not as much Yao Mei's, because she's purposely like replacing the parts not to be herself, but I think it's still applicable in a way. But it's interesting because like, going back to it, Kujirai saying like she did not remember not having a past and not really remembering. She didn't really realize any of that until all this started coming up. So the question becomes, why hasn't anyone around her said anything? Is it a situation of they don't realize she hasn't had any memory? Because does she not really, like, has she subconsciously never thought about it, or is it at the forefront of her mind but she's never had to really confront it until she goes, wait, I don't remember my past? Could this be me? But I'm looking at this woman, and yes, it is me, and I just don't think it is anymore, or it can't be me, can it? It just, there's such a disconnect. It's also interesting too because I brought up at this point last episode, I was like, well, her name's not Reiko, and yes, her name is also Reiko, and I was like, oh, because I feel like she would have mentioned that. But as we see in the flashback, when Kudo and her meet for the first time, she introduced herself as Reiko Kujirai. So you're like, oh, so you are the same person. You just lost your memories, if that is what that is. But yeah, it's such an interesting situation because like, why has no one else commented on it? Because Gwen, the guy from the tea house, he never said anything, but I was like, well, maybe Kudo just hasn't said anything to everyone else, even though it's like he's the one that took the photo. So I guess he's knowledgeable enough about Kujirai, but I mean, it might be a thing of, well, I only met you because of the photo thing. Like, who knows how often they ever went to the tea house? We have no idea how much time has passed between then and there, because we see the flashbacks of when they first met, because Kudo got transferred from the Japanese company over here to the branch, to the Kowloon branch, and he meets Kujirai, and even just her whole energy, there's similarities, but she does seem like almost like a completely different person. And we now know why Kudo goes to the dumpling place like every day, even though she's like, oh, I want to go here. He's like, oh, let's go to the dumpling place, because she kind of made a point of let's go there every day. So now it adds elements to like, okay, so everywhere Kudo was taking her last episode, maybe he was hoping it would trigger something, because like, you know, because she feels nostalgic about Kowloon. She's like, all the things about it, like it's a similar conversation to the one that he had with Kujirai, like on a rooftop last episode. So it's like, right, he was kind of probably trying to trigger stuff there in her memories. But what I think is so interesting, if you look when they do the sky shot, and I think they did that purposely, was to show you the generic Terra wasn't in the sky, but they are roughly about the same ages, because he's like 30, she's 32. So not unless she's lost more time than she thinks, so she thinks she's still 32, but maybe she's like 33 or 34, like maybe even more time has passed type of situation. Obviously it made me think of like Kingdom Hearts, from like Chain of Memories to Kingdom Hearts 2, just because of the whole, like, well, Sora lost a year of their memories, and they didn't. Obviously, you never fully. I won't go. That's a whole rabbit hole. But a year passed, and they didn't really realize it or know it, because their memories were being restored in that process. So it just kind of like scratches a little bit of that itch in my head of like, oh, like there's parallels maybe to something like that, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting too, because Yao Mei refers to this other Kujirai, the one from the photos, as, oh, this is Kujirai B. But I'm like, wouldn't she technically be Kujirai B, and that'd be Kujirai A? But I guess the point is to be like, no, like, you're you, and this woman isn't you, but maybe it is you, and you lost your memories. And for her, it's just like, she's like, why hasn't Kudo ever said anything up until this time? It's like she herself would never know, because he would have never brought it up if she had never found the photo. And even Yao Mei's like, why don't you ask him? But I think it's the thing of she's kind of scared to ask him, to kind of find out. And so, and Yao Mei's perspective is, well, maybe Kudo's not asking you because he wants you to get your memories back naturally. And it's just kind of like I say, it adds credence to like him taking to her all these like nostalgic places in Kowloon and talking about it, making him feel nostalgic. And even now, like, I didn't even remember, I forgot to talk about that line in retrospect, as we figured stuff out in the episode, when she says like, you, Kudo, make me feel nostalgic. And even she says it this episode, like, do you remember me saying that you make me feel nostalgic? And he's just kind of like, huh? And he looks at her and he talks about the lines in her eyes, but also points out like, oh, your ears aren't pierced, which you're like, that's interesting. Which now begs the question, like, were her ears ever pierced, or were they also clip-ons, or were they pierced and then the holes closed up? I mean, they can, if the hole's small enough, it can close up on its own. So that's what I'm curious about, And I think that's a sad thing. I think Kudo does want her to be back the way she was, but it's the thing of, because he doesn't realize how much the things he's saying weigh on her, because he doesn't know that she at least has some idea that she lost her memory. So the fact is that he doesn't realize, like, a remark like, oh, your ears aren't pierced. Like, he doesn't know how, like, normally that wouldn't mean anything, but she has the context of the photo and everything. So now it's like, and it's kind of sad, because later on she's looking for earrings, just because of that line, and Yao Mei picks out some for her, be like, oh, these are perfect, they look like Kujirai B, and she puts them on, and she's so smiling, and you see Yao Mei kind of look a little sad, or just kind of have like this face of like, because I think it is that complicated thing of you're chasing the shadow of Kujirai B, as they refer to her, where it's just like you're trying so hard to be her, and it's just like maybe things aren't going to go the way you want them to, because it's just like, you said that's not her, but it's like you have feelings for Kudo and you don't know how he feels about you. Because now it's like, well, because once again, it's like I said, the Shipaticius thing of like, well, if I don't have my memories and stuff like that, can I say that was me? And am I that person anymore? Because I'm me who I am now. So we know Kudo loved that Kujirai B because they were engaged, and it's like, well, how does he feel about me now? And is he busy trying to make me into who I was before, versus like letting me just be who I am now? But it's, there's a lot of who you are now but it's all, you could once again make the argument she's a different person, because she doesn't have the inclinations to always go for dumplings. She wanted to try somewhere new, and Kudo kept always pushing like, no, don't worry about nothing new. New isn't always that great, new doesn't last. Nostalgia, the old, is always there. So it's like you kind of want her to be who you want her to be, because that's the woman you fell in love with. But that's kind of insensitive and kind of messed up, and even he recognizes that later, but we'll get to that in a second. And she's chasing the shadow of who she was. I mean, we even see that scene later on where she's kind of sad in her room, and you're seeing the shadow of like all this stuff Kujirai is doing, like smoking on the bed. Kujirai B is doing smoking on the bed, or like cutting up watermelons and stuff like that. It's just, once again, it's just kind of like, oh, was she in this apartment doing the same thing? Stuff like that. It's just, you're busy chasing the shadow of your past self, and kind of, ignoring who you are now to some extent, because you have no past, because you don't remember it, but this seems to be your past. It's almost like you're trying to retroactively fit a triangle and a square hole type of it's I'm not putting it the right way, but it feels like that to some extent, and I don't know if that's necessarily what the story's trying to say, but it feels like that was kind of what Kujirai's story kind of feels like this episode. But yeah, like when she walks up with the earrings on in front of Kudo, he's almost like, Reiko? Doesn't even just call her Kujirai, like, you know, he calls her by her first name. And then she's like, oh, these aren't real piercings, like these are clip-ons. And then he's just like, why'd you do that? And kind of walks away, and that upsets her because, you know, and even later on he realizes how insensitive that was. Once again, I don't know if Reiko's ears were actually pierced or was it a situation of she also had clip-ons, and but I think it probably was like her ears actually were pierced, and now it's just kind of like, oh, like, why are you trying, like, why would you do that? What are you doing? Why would you even do that? You know? And he recognizes later on, like, yo, I was being insensitive. You know, because he so wants her back. And she went to Yao Mei about it, and she's just kind of beating herself up. She's like, I tried to like make myself look a certain way in front of him, and say I never wanted him to make that face towards me, because she kind of felt like, oh, she kind of took a misstep in their journey and their, you know, whatever this romance is. She felt like she took a step back and all of that. So, um, also, Gwen from the tea house apparently like retired or whatever, and the new guy's like, I don't know, man, I just started today. And it's just like, because even Kudo's like, I introduced Gwen to that place he was renting out. So it's like, and then he's looking at a page and he gets an error. He's like, what? I've never gotten this error before. It's like a 500 something error. And he's like, what is that about? Can we see that in the opening where it's just like these, like, we even see it with like Kujirai, or like what is essentially a silhouette of Kujirai be like the same one that was in her apartment doing all that stuff. And we see like, I think a 404 error page saying like, oh, this page can't be found type of thing. So it's interesting about the Gwen of it all, especially after last episode, especially after Kujirai had that moment where she was looking down and she didn't recognize it, but we as the audience saw like the place looked dilapidated, and then like boom, like Gwen wasn't there either. So I don't know if that was supposed to be before and what's going on there. But ultimately, at the very least, Kudo does apologize to Kujirai about how yesterday went. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of put a lot on you. And she's like, well, good. Take me to the lemon chicken place because you kind of broke my heart yesterday. So, but he's like, fine, we'll eat there for dinner because like, chicken makes me want to drink. Uh, is that specifically a Korean thing, or is that just an Asian thing in general? Like, I don't know if that's a stereotype or not. I do feel like I see that get utilized a lot. I feel like I see it more in Korean stuff than I do Japanese stuff, I think. But maybe, like I said, it might be an Asian thing in general, like chicken and alcohol kind of going hand in hand. I mean, hell, maybe that's more of a thing in America too, and I just don't think about it. But either way, you know, I'm not the alcohol dude, so I wouldn't know what foods typically pair with alcohol like that. But yeah, he eats it and says it's delicious, and she's so excited. I'm like, oh, look at you, you're really enjoying it. And he's like, oh, you've had this place before? Did you come alone? She's like, no, I came with my friend Yao Mei. And he didn't, like, he just had him, they just lingered on his face, like, huh. Because I guess Kujirai never really had any friends. Once again, and I brought that up earlier. It's like, there's no conversation about any friends. Like, Yao Mei's like the first friend she's ever really talked about. And Zhao Hei's like the kid from the neighborhood we saw in a little bit at the beginning of the episode. It's like, right, she lives in one of the places, like the company I work for, the real estate company I work for, like, leases out. So, but they end up at the Hebe Numa, like, medical center gets open, and they go there and get some like test run, you know, because it's like, oh, you're, because of it opening, everyone gets like a free like I guess screening and just test, you know, health check and stuff. And there's like a cosmetic place to like, oh, you can get like, you know, any, you know, cosmetic like consultant. And obviously the fine lines conversation that Kudo keeps throwing her way. She's like, oh, anti-aging, she wants to go. And we see at the end of the episode, she ends up going there and having an appointment with Hidenuma, and he's weird and comes off extremely creepy because he's like, oh, Reiko Kujirai, and it's like, why did you come here? And she's like, oh, like for my fine lines and stuff. And he talks about, oh, what's your family history? Do you have any? Are you married? She's like, well, I don't remember. He's like, well, that's not my expertise, so I can't really help you on that. But he talks about the fine lines on her face, and he has this sinister smile on his face when he turns away from her. But he talks about how, hey, like that. I guess because I was about to say later on, he says like, "Oh, that makeup, that lipstick she put on doesn't match her," and it's like, "Well, the first lipstick she pulled out, she was like, that's." Because I was about to say like it's the red that Kudurai B wore. So I guess she might have picked a different brand. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna put on a different lipstick." It ended up being kind of like this peach color lipstick instead of like I guess I don't know lipstick. So I was about to say like a more naked lipstick versus like a bright red that she is associated with, which is interesting considering Hebe Newman's like was kind of potentially wearing something like that, so it's interesting. But either way, he made comments about her fine lines because he's like, right, your wrinkles are your history and stuff. But he's like, when I look at you, I don't see that. Like I see, it feels like your fine lines only just popped up. They're not a byproduct of you living life. You know, it's almost like these records on your skin were just kind of like popped up one day, and it's like, oh, it's ironic your wrinkles and your lines have no history, just like you who have no past and no history. And it is interesting though, because it's like that's why I'm like, wait, I was like, are we going down like the Android route? That's why I was like, I don't know what to expect. And once again, I'm just working this out in my head, trying to figure things out. But I'm like, and theorizing about stuff. I don't actually want an answer to it because I don't want anything spoiled for me. But like for him making that statement of like, oh, it's almost just like you kind of just existed. But he was almost kind of making a point too of, regardless of having no history, you do exist right here and right now. And that is what matters, the you and here and now. And then he kind of gets all close to her and wipes the lipstick off her lips, and she gets creeped out and leaves. And once again, he talks about that not being her shade, and it's like, so he definitely has had experience with her, and he kind of got all delighted when he found out about the whole no memories thing. So what's that all about? I'm wondering, does that have any connection to the Gwen of it all, like him just randomly disappearing the way he did this episode? Because it's interesting, because which I find fascinating, that kind of staying on that Gwen thing for a second. Obviously, I brought up the fact is that Kudo went there. I wonder for what reason. But then independently, Yao Mei and Kujirai went there. And then it's like, oh, we wanted to get some answers from that guy, but he's gone. And Yao Mei's like, well, let me know what he looks like so I can kind of be on the lookout for him, so I can question him about stuff. As the person who took the photo of Kujirai B and Kudo. But yeah, like the timing is interesting. But also the thing I remember, something else I want to comment on. It's interesting because Kudo like took her to that place, but like she couldn't find that place at first, because she eventually got there near the end of like last episode. She got there, but like she was looking for the place for a while. She's like, I can't find it. It is interesting that she was able to find it with Yao Mei, potentially with no issue, but maybe it's like you couldn't find the place when you need to, but now when you do need to find a place for very specific reasons, it makes itself appear to you. I don't know. It could also just be like she got lost on the way, and now she has a better idea where everything is now because she's been around and spent that time with Kudo last episode, going to like places, once again trying to trigger that memory in her. Maybe that's how that's supposed to be interpreted. Either way, it's gonna be interesting to see where all this takes us. Like I said, this Hebe Numa thing of like who he is and what's his connection to all this, like, because obviously we're building up him in the background mainly of, yeah, he took over his father's company and he made it prosper like crazy, and that's where it is right now. But also, even Kudo last episode was like, I don't know, there's something about that guy I don't like. And I'm like, I wonder, does Kudo know something about him that's related to her potentially having no memories or whatever? How will he react knowing she went to visit him yesterday? Once again, he's the one that keeps making these remarks about her fine lines, making her kind of insecure. But once again, I don't think he thinks, because he probably doesn't think she feels any way towards him with her memories going. So he, and maybe that's also him being a little like, hey, that was kind of like me and Kujirai B. That was like our back and forth, and that was some of that. So like I said, it does feel like the dynamic has shifted to the other foot, because Kujirai, he feels like he's more in the Kujirai B position, whereas like Kujirai A is kind of in the Kudo position where they are currently. So, with just like how he approaches her, like he still kind of has his like goofy self, but like, once again, that's him overcompensating in a lot of ways. I don't know. I'm interested to watch the next episode. Obviously, I got to wait a little bit, but I'm interested to see where this goes next and how this plays out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.